In this video, I'm going to be talking about cold therapy and testosterone. So the first thing I want to show you is this claim by Joe Rogan.
Along the way, a funny thing happened to his testosterone. It went through the roof to 1140, which is crazy high. He said my urologist didn't believe me. He thought I must be juicing. So he had my luteinizing hormones tested too. Sure enough, 8.9 is off the charts for a fat guy in his 50s. He said, then I did a research and discovered a Japanese study from 1991 that showed the secret was exercising after your ice bath. So he said, now I'm stuck with the T levels of an oversexed 19-year-old. I'm not complaining. Damn. So here's an extreme benefit to heavy-duty cold exposure. Right. And then you force your body to heat up, and then you work out. And along the way...
So I'm going to be discussing this study, but I'll get into it at the end, because first I want to set the foundations of you fundamentally understanding how cold therapy, overall being in the cold or whatever it is, affects your hormones and things like that. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do is set the foundations with scripture. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 2:6. What does that mean? There's difference between wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it into your fruit salad. And then understanding is a more complex understanding from God's point of view. So this is exactly what we're going to be doing in this video. So we went over the clip, and the research I'm going to be going through is just research that I found through studying individuals like Ray Peat, some claims made by people like Georgi Ginkov and things like that. And yeah, let's get into it. So Ray Peat mentions in one of his books that 75% of the metabolic energy is spent maintaining body temperature. So remember that. A cold shower can wake you up and kickstart your body to produce its own heat, and you will feel warmer, but at what cost? If your metabolism isn't good, this temporary benefit is probably achieved via stress hormones or depleting stressing you further. When you fundamentally understand testosterone production, how it's produced, from having higher thyroid hormones, T3, having adequate amount of vitamin A, having enough LDL cholesterol to produce pregnenolone, which is a precursor to testosterone. So if you're messing with your protective hormones, long term you're going to mess with your testosterone levels. So first things first, I want to look at cold therapy and body fat. So let's get into it. So I have a bunch of research. So sit down, relax, and let's get into it. So in this study, explored how thyroid hormones are related to brown adipose tissue activation in the response to cold exposure. The findings suggest that circulating free thyroid T3, which is thyroid hormone, is higher in brown adipose tissue positive subjects and is stronger predictor of energy expenditure changes after both interventions in healthy humans. So then we have this study. So in this study, investigates effects of short-term cold exposure on protein metabolism in skeletal muscle. The results show that after 24 hours of cold exposure, protein synthesis decreased, meaning you're not building muscle anymore, you're in a state of catabolism. Additionally, catecholamines and corticosterone, cortisol, and overall stress hormones and thyroid hormones were higher in cold exposed rats compared with controlled rats. So you can see primarily here, cold exposure led to higher stress hormones. And the reason behind higher thyroid hormones, as you can see here, the body's heating up, keeping the body warmer, and going back to the repeating, 75% of your energy is spent of regulating temperature. So if you're exposed to cold temperature, your body's going to produce more thyroid hormones because you're utilizing brown adipose tissue to produce heat and warm you up. Cold also increases the activity of the desaturase enzyme, thus increasing the ratio of PUFA and saturated fats. So the colder you are, the more polyunsaturated fats you're going to have in your system. Just like salmon, for example, it's high in polyunsaturated fats because it swims in cold water, versus fish that you find in warm water would have more saturated fats. And as you can see, most people's temperatures and heart rate are decreasing, which are a very good indicator of your metabolic rate. There's a claim, I think that was Georgi Ginkov made. I do not know a single old person who can tolerate cold, sleep well, or is able to maintain a comfortable body temperature without the need for extra help like clothes and heating. Okay? Warm-blooded creatures like mice and humans do not function well in the cold. So your body, you need to be warm, right? When you're warm, you produce enzymes, specific enzymes within your body. That's why it's better to eat warm food. Be warmer when you eat. When you're cold, you're not going to digest the food properly because the enzymes are not functioning at their best. In this study, cancer patients also commonly report suffering deep chills, especially following treatment. It's possible that growing tumors may induce a cold stress that probably promotes their own survival. We don't know exactly, blah, blah, blah. They show that increasing body temperature to a mild fever over the course of a few hours improves response rates to radiation therapy. Why do you think you get a fever when you get sick? Because your body functions better at a higher temperature. Ray Peat said, if the feet temperature, if you drop below a certain temperature, they may a toxic substance. Hence, if you're hypothyroid, I recommend sleeping with socks, even gloves on, to keep your extremities warm. And why am I talking about metabolism and health? Because it all spirals down to testosterone levels. If you're in a hypometabolic state, hypothyroid, you're not going to be producing testosterone because you don't have enough T3 to produce pregnenolone, so on and so forth. And some of the times the reason there is increases in testosterone is because testosterone is being produced by the adrenal glands. But I'm going to get into that later. Brown adipose tissue is important for regulating body temperature. When exposed to cold, the sympathetic nervous system triggers the recruitment of brown adipose tissues. Sympathetic meaning a stress response, which is not good long term. You don't want to have high stress hormones. Researchers studied white rats exposed to different temperatures to understand how their bodies produce heat in response to cold. They measured blood flow and found that brown adipose tissue played a major role in regulating heat in cold exposed rats, while the effects of cold on blood flow to other organs were similar. Researchers looked at how hormones called catecholamines are involved in the production of heat in adult sheep exposed to cold. They found that giving medications that block the effects of these hormones reduce cold-induced heat production in warm and cold acclimated sheep. Heat production. So I'm just setting the stage of what brown adipose tissue is. Then you have more studies that shown that humans have brown adipose tissue, which can be activated and recruited to counteract obesity. In this study, researchers found that 10 days of exposure to cold temperatures increased brown adipose tissue activity in both men and women, which led to an increase in non-shivering thermogenesis and ST. However, the study did not find evidence of browning of abdominal subcutaneous white adipose tissue called acclimation. There's another study here. In rats, just bear with me, this is getting boring. In rats, cold acclimation causes the brown fat in their bodies to grow and use more oxygen, creating heat that warms their spinal colds, heart and other organs, the blood vessels, So there's another here thing there. So on this, basically here, summarized here, this text discusses a molecule called PGC1, which is involved in the process of adaptive thermogenesis, a way that the body uses to regulate energy and fight against obesity. PGC1 is found in brown fat and skeletal muscle, two important tissues for generating heat. It increases the activity of certain proteins that promote heat production in the body and can even turn white fat cells into brown-like cells. In summary, PGC1 plays a crucial role in controlling how the body generates heat to regulate energy balance. So my conclusion on all of this, your body will adapt to its environment. It's smarter than you think. Brown adipose tissue in the body will increase due to cold temperatures. So if you're constantly exposing yourself to the cold, your body needs brown adipose tissue to keep you warm in times of cold. So what it's going to do, you're going to store more brown adipose tissue. One of the factors, one of the features of fat is to keep you warm. This could be accomplished by a low metabolism. So let's say you have a low metabolic rate and you're constantly cold. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to put on more body fat to keep you warmer. So it's a adaptation. And bear with me when it comes to this statement. I don't claim this is the word of God. This is something that I made up. If you disagree, that's no problem. Lack of heat production from cell respiration or cold temperatures. So overall, the emphasis is on cold temperatures. So if you were to undergo constantly sitting in the cold, it's going to result in this. So then we get into overall testicles. So testosterone is produced in the testicles and the Leydig cells. And let's get into it. So one thing that Ray said about the reasons mammals keep their testicles at a slightly lower temperature, he talks about increasing the structure of the cell water in the sperm. So whatever he says here, I don't really understand it that much. Something to do with, I don't even want to try. He speculates that birds may not develop large brains because their testes are kept inside their body at a high temperature. So now we're going the other way. The importance of keeping specifically just your testicles cooler, right? So keeping the testicles cool can increase sperm count and fertility because sperm cells have high levels of N3 omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA, which increases the fluidity and mobility of the sperm membranes. The high molecular motion of DHA in the membranes allows so basically, just like I talked about, salmon cannot have saturated fat because it would just become hard because it's in very cold temperature. That's why it has polyunsaturated fat, because it's in cold and it's more fluid in that temperature. Likewise, in your testicles, your sperm has PUFAs because its environment should be cooler, right? And that's why you see a lot of things not to keep your balls warm, because it can cause oxidative stress on the testicles. This study discusses the lipid metabolism and composition of the sperm cell membrane. Sperm cells use lipid for energy, fats, and the membrane is specially structured. These lipids, that's more about PUFA. That's more about the importance of PUFA being used. Looked at different in types of lipids. By the way, I'm going to be leaving this document in the description so you can check out these studies. That's why I have it structured the way it is. Found out to the dim. Notice how lower omega-3's PUFA leads to lower sperm viability. The more saturated, the less viable. So it's important for your testicles to be at a certain temperature. That's why they're away from the body. DHA is extremely fragile and is prone to oxidation, and one of the biggest dangers for polyunsaturated fats, especially for omega-3s, is heat. So it makes sense why testicles are on the outside of the body, and in nature before clothing would have been kept cool, but no longer. And so wearing clothes puts thermal pressure on the sperm, and for many men it's too much, and the sperm auto-oxidizes, hence why antioxidants are so powerful. Like you see all these studies like onions boost testosterone levels by 300% because onions are high in antioxidants. In this study, 50 men with low sperm count or poor sperm movement were treated with scrotal cooling using ice packs at night. Held in one place, sperm count movement were measured before and after treatment. The results showed that 65% of the patients had at least a twofold increase in sperm count and improved sperm movement. This suggests that heat may have a negative effect on sperm production. The success rate of the treatment was the same whether or not the men had this. I'm not going to try pronouncing that. So conclusion, testicles must be kept cool to prevent PUFA oxidation, which leads to oxidative damage. Hence why antioxidants are so powerful at boosting testosterone levels naturally. Okay. Now testosterone. This is why you're here, right? So in this study, human testes perform at their best when they're around 31 to 36 degrees. Anything hotter than that will negatively impact DNA synthesis, spermatogenesis, production of sperm, and most likely also testosterone production. This is why I believe if you have high FSH, which is responsible for sperm production, that's not a good thing. That means maybe there's something happening and that's compensating. It's like a lever, right? When your bicep contracts, your tricep relaxes. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So this study found that rats who were exposed to 43% degrees heat for 15 minutes had significantly lower testosterone levels and a staggering 65.4 reduction in testicular weight when compared to the control group. So high heat on the testicles lowered testosterone. This study looked at how heat treatment affect Leydig cells, which are in the testicles. The researchers exposed the rats to single heat treatment of water at 43 degrees for 30 minutes and found that the heat caused Leydig cell reduction testosterone production. They always found that the heat treatment increased the productivity of the Leydig cells and downregulated two enzymes involved in testosterone biosynthesis. These findings suggest that heat treatment can affect Leydig cells function and testosterone production in adult male rats. The researchers in this study tested 6,455 semen samples for a period of 3 years. They found out that sperm quality, volume, and motility was significantly higher in the colder months of the year. Several animal studies on monkeys and rams have concluded that testicular Leydig cells exposed to heat can secrete testosterone as well as colder gonads do. Few studies have also found out that effects may not be instant, they come with a lag. So a lot of guys look into icing their balls, right? So icing testicles increases ATP in that region, so energy production. Just like when you have a cold shower at night, it's not optimal because people understand being cold is going to improve your sleep quality. But it works the other way. If you cool yourself with a cold shower at night, your body's going to heat up. So just like with testicles, you cool them, it's going to increase energy within that area to heat it up. Increases energy production in the mitochondria and can even wake up so-called dormant mitochondria. That's interesting. I think I got this in the forum. This study looked at the hormone levels of 32 healthy 19-year-old men before and after they exercised on a bicycle and had cold water stimulation. Was this the... And the results showed that during exercise, the levels of testosterone neutralizing hormone and noradrenaline in the blood significantly increased. During cold water stimulation, the testosterone levels decreased, but neutralizing hormone levels increased. So you can see here, testosterone levels decreased. So like I mentioned, biceps contracts, the water. So if your testosterone decrease, your luteinizing hormone will obviously increase because your body's like wants to create a homeostasis. So LH is responsible for pituitary, LH, FSH, the testicles, Leydig cells, more testosterone. So if you have less testosterone, something decreased testosterone, you're going to produce more LH to bring you back to the right state. So remember this. So overall, physical exercise boosts testosterone. Everybody knows that. This study looked at the effects of swimming in cold water on the immune system, on male rats. Overall, serum testosterone levels were significantly lower, and the improvement in immunity or whatever was due to inhibition by testosterone, right? This study examines the impact of different types of stress on male sexual behavior and the levels of testosterone. Testosterone decreased in rats exposed to electric foot shocks or immersion in cold water. So getting into cold water lowered testosterone. This study, same thing, cold water immersion, sperm quality was also reduced in chronically stressed males. Chronic stress was also found to reduce quality of sperm due to a decrease in testosterone levels. This study, same thing, cold water immersion induced stress for 20 to 50 days, decreased testosterone levels and increased cortisol levels. There was something, but actually when they were still sexually active, the testosterone levels maintained. Yeah, this study looked how exposure to heat affects the production of testosterone in rats. They exposed two groups of rats to hot baths over a period of 4 weeks, while two other groups of rats were not exposed to heat. The researchers measured testosterone levels in the testes and blood. It significantly lowered testosterone level, lowered the level of one of the enzymes that produce testosterone as well. One hypothesis might be to speculate that since noradrenaline increases substantially with short-term cold exposure, and since it acts on the preoptic area of the hypothalamus, which, as we already know, is the site of excretion of GnRH, which stimulates the pituitary to release LH and FSH, which leads to testosterone production, that ice baths will increase testosterone production. So there's different ways you can look at it, right? But I will conclude it at the end. Then other things for cold therapy. So this study looked at whether applying ice locally can help reduce the pain. So overall, cold therapy reduces inflammation. Here, hypothermia is a response to systematic inflammation. Your body will go cold in response to inflammation that is typically seen as harmful to the body. However, in rodents, regulated hypothermia, lowering of body temperature, is in response to cold temperature during inflammation, has been found to improve survival. One thing, like having cold showers after you train, your body has a natural reaction to stress by creating inflammation in the muscle to fight with the stress, but you synthetically lowering the inflammation is going to mess with your hormetic stress response. Hence, I don't recommend cold showers after training, right? So now let's get into this Japanese study which Joe Rogan was talking about. Where is this? So here's the study. So whatever. I want to get into the actual results. Okay. So here, in this study, analysis was done by median value. Testosterone increased 20.8%, and LH increased. So hormone levels after cold water stimulation. After cold water stimulation, testosterone levels decreased by 10%. Right? This thing at the top was just about training. But so testosterone levels decreased and LH increased by 22%. So this was what Joe Rogan was talking about. But let me tell you what it actually is. The reason why your LH is increasing is because you're decreasing your testosterone. So if you decrease your testosterone, your body's like, whoa, we need to get back to homeostasis. It's going to produce more LH. That's why you have to be cautious of like, oh, look at this supplement boosted my LH levels by 22%. Yeah, but what happened to your testosterone levels? What about, and you see this with like some supplements that the aspartic acid, oh, it boosts testosterone levels. Yeah, it boosts testosterone levels because it stops the AR enzyme which converts your testosterone to DHT. So always look at the context of why is something happening, and we clearly can see the reason why there's such a big spike in luteinizing hormone is because it's decreasing testosterone levels. So you can see cold therapy decreased testosterone levels. So now overall cold therapy, like, and metabolic health, fundamentally long term, for you to have higher testosterone levels, you need to have higher thyroid hormones, be in a good metabolic state. And you create that by having a summer-like environment. You have a lot of food. You have abundance of food, so your body has higher thyroid hormones. You're consuming fructose, things like that. Choline in the liver, LDL cholesterol, then you have thyroid hormones, then you have vitamin A from like liver or whatever it is, producing pregnenolone, producing testosterone, so on and so forth. But doing cold therapy constantly can create a winter-like environment. Just think about it logically. When do you sleep? You sleep during the night when it's cold and dark because it's a stress response. Your body sleeps during the night. Why do bears hibernate? Because it gets cold, dark, there's less food, higher serotonin levels. I've talked to a lot of guys that get on calls with me and they're like, oh, I do cold showers every day, and they're super numb, they have low testosterone levels because they're stressing out their body, and that creates an environment which their body's under stress, so serotonins increase, which makes them very numb, slow moving, energy efficient, very similar to endurance training. Why do birds move locations when it gets colder? Because they're moving away from winter, they're moving to warmer countries. So being in the cold is a stress response, right? You don't want to be constantly exposing yourself to the cold. It's a stress response. But then vice versa, the environment that we're in right now, having your balls constantly warm and things like that is going to lower your testosterone. But then being in cold is messed up as well. So you need to find the happy medium, which is basically using things like, I've seen work very well on like forums and things like that, icing your balls, for instance, for like 5 to 10 minutes. So let's say you have your boxers, you have an external bag of like ice, you cool them for like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe in the morning before you go to sleep. Like it says here, there's no point just icing your balls randomly. Maybe have a cooling pack or something on it when you're doing activities that are going to raise the temperature, such as driving. So for me, for instance, now I'm sitting and I do my work here, maybe icing here while I do my work without keeping it super warm. That's going to benefit me much more because it's a long-term solution for them being super warm and me sitting here, right? I'm rambling, but overall, when it comes to cold therapy, will cold therapy and doing cold showers and cold therapy every day boost your testosterone levels? Maybe initially, as it spikes your adrenaline, gets you hyped, but it's a short-term solution, just like fasting, ketosis. It's a stress response to your environment. It's called the catecholamine honeymoon. The reason why you feel so amazing while you're in ketosis because your stress hormones are high. Initially, it makes you feel amazing, but long-term, it's detrimental to your body. So overall, I do not recommend it. I do not recommend it for after a shower. Is there cases of, like mentioned before, using it tactically to get more activation in the area? Go for it. So if I was to implement cold therapy, I would just play around with just focusing on the testicles rather than full body cold immersion, which can create a stressor. Maybe I would use cold therapy on specific areas that I'm struggling with, but I wouldn't do full body just to generically. But yeah, testicles, 5 to 10 minutes, 1 to 2 times a day. And that's how you can go about it. So that being said, hopefully you got some value out of this video. And yeah, peace.